From completely wiping out the previous DC universe to creating a completely new set of films and TV shows, James Gunn has definitely changed things up for the DCU. But with all this new stuff, fans can't help but feel cheated by all the Black Adam teasers that will never happen now. When The Rock was marketing the Black Adam movie, he was making it out to be one of the biggest shifts in DC yet. He claimed that the movie was going to change the hierarchy of DC, and that it was going to be the first step in what would essentially be a new saga for the universe. Fans now know that almost none of what Dwayne said will actually come to pass.
Let me see your hands.
And this is mostly because of the fact that James's new universe doesn't have space for any of the plans that Johnson came up with. Instead, Gunn is focusing on starting things off from scratch, even if it means firing existing cast members like Henry Cavill. What this means is that the anticipated Black Adam vs. Superman fight that The Rock was hyping up as the next big thing for the DCU will also likely get scrapped, along with any chances of a Black Adam sequel. It makes pretty much everything he'd spent months hyping up essentially null and void. You can't help but feel bad for Dwayne in this situation, because he definitely was quite hyped for the role. In fact, this is a project that he's been attached to for decades. The idea for a Black Adam film starring The Rock goes back a lot more than you'd think. The film has been in production for so long that you'd almost think it was supposed to be Dwayne's magnum opus, especially because he's been super invested into the project since the start. This makes the movie's failure even more of a harsh thing to deal with. Despite all the time and energy that he put into making it, at the end of the day, not only did it end up flopping on the big screen, but any chance the franchise may have had of seeing future success in its current state was essentially taken away because of the studio changes. In a way, it feels like the film came out at the worst possible time ever.
Let's end this.
It was somewhat of a generic superhero movie, at a moment where people are generally getting tired of the usual superhero formula. Not to mention, it was released right before Gunn's big shakeup. In fact, it may have even been the reason why WB decided that they needed someone new at the helm. Because despite some exciting teasers for the future, the film did poorly at the box office. It's tough to really nail down what went wrong with this movie. Johnson is great for the role, because even the harshest reviews were able to sing some praises for him. So it's clear that he's not the issue with the movie. Maybe it's got to do with the character of Black Adam himself. It's kind of hard to understand why the DCEU would opt for a movie involving a lesser-known bad guy like him, especially when there are tons of other heroes and anti-heroes to pick from. The worst part is that the movie failed to do justice to the character anyway. His personality on screen wasn't really like how he's depicted in the comic books. The writers had to take a lot of creative liberties to translate his character for the movie, and this resulted in a weird sort of anti-hero that was mostly shown in a vanilla setting.
The people of Kahndaq rise up against you.
It doesn't have the unique appeal that superhero films need nowadays to stand out. You could even honestly call the film outdated, because it feels like a decade behind its time. With so many MCU films having been released over the past few years, it's hard to imagine anyone getting excited about a superhero film that's just more of the same. But that's not even the thing that's most disappointing. The thing that has fans upset the most is that they're never going to see Dwayne's vision play out.
Now I'll take the lead.
Listen, and you two hang back till we call you. Whether anvil you or the hammer, you're ready.
No, don't send me home. I can help.
I know, but you can do better.
It's hard to really say if Gunn's version of the DCU will succeed, but many were hoping to see The Rock get a chance at his. Dwayne seemed intensely passionate about the DC universe, and it's hard to deny that he's got a natural charisma that just hypes people up. Even though he stepped into the DC universe at a time when people were losing interest, his personality and his presence were able to get some fans interested in what he had cooking. So the fact that he's never going to get a chance to bring that to the big screen is a big disappointment.
You think yourself a hero, but you would let these criminals go free.
Heroes don't kill people.
especially because his plans included an eventual showdown between Black Adam and Superman. Fans have always loved Henry's take on the iconic superhero, and after so many years of absence, they were beyond hyped to see him return back to action. It looked like the DC Universe finally had some direction it was heading in, but unfortunately it all went up in flames just a few moments later. It's likely that fans will never get the chance to see this showdown happen, and at most, if they're lucky, Dwayne may explain his plan for potential future films in an interview later down the line. As is, fans are going to have to disappointingly say goodbye to this version of their universe. Although if you ask me, disappointment and DC pretty much go hand in hand at this point. And while I'm on the subject, the studio changes also mean Cavill may never return. Henry getting fired quite like he did was definitely one of the biggest controversies that Gunn caused. He clarified later on that it's not that Cavill got fired, but rather that he wasn't hired to begin with. Still, the fact that he seemed to be on board to play the role of Superman in a potential future DC film involving Black Adam before James showed up is enough of a reason for fans to go after Gunn. The unfortunate part is that the way Henry was treated probably means that he's unlikely to ever return to the DC universe. Even if it isn't as Superman, I personally think James would have made fans a lot happier if he moved forward with one more film starring Superman. He already set up the DC Elseworld storylines. These are essentially all the DC movies that aren't a part of the main DCU timeline. Giving Henry a proper send-off and maybe even involving Dwayne in that movie could have helped a ton in getting fans to join his side.
Sabok. He commands the legions of hell. Whatever happens, you stay behind.
Be prepared.
As is, it looks like a lot of people aren't too pleased with the way this new DCU is starting off. Still, I think it's a good idea to have some faith in James. It's pretty obvious that Gunn wasn't dealt the best set of cards. He had the seemingly impossible task of making sense of the DC universe. Keep in mind that there are multiple films, many of which aren't linked in any way. Then, there are the remnants of the Snyderverse. Trying to make sense of all this was so tough that I'm not too shocked that Gunn decided to pull the plug and start from scratch. For the most part, the new films and TV shows featured in the updated DC slate look great. It's the most cohesive thing that I've seen from this studio in a very long time. And if James is able to nail all of these projects, then I do think that fans will get over the pain of losing out on The Rock's vision of the DC universe, especially if the Black Adam film was an indication of what was to come. Anyway, what are your thoughts on all of the Black Adam teases which will never happen in the DC universe? See you in the next one.